Rain in Eastbridge didn't fall. It settled, like the city itself had given up. Ethan Patel stood under the flickering bus shelter on 7th and Mercer, soaked through his Walmart brand hoodie, counting the minutes since his shift ended at Nexa Fulfillment Center, a 1.2 million square foot concrete maze on the edge of town where he stacked, scanned, and shipped cheap phone cases for influencers he'd never heard of. His phone died at 11:42 p.m., right after his supervisor, Carl, leaned over his shoulder and said, "Mandatory OT, Patel. Again, don't make it weird." Ethan didn't argue. Not when his mom's dialysis copay was $380 this month. Not when his sister Priya had maxed out her credit cards covering the gap. Not when the hospital social worker had gently suggested, "Have you looked into hospice options?" He shifted his weight off his left knee, the one that still ached from high school soccer and now screamed after 12 hours on concrete. His duffel bag hung heavy on his shoulder. Gym clothes, a half-crushed granola bar, his late dad's pocket watch, still ticking, glass cracked in the accident, and a folded printout of his mom's latest lab results. Creatinine 4.9, GFR 18, words he'd Googled too many times. The 11:47 p.m. bus never came. At 11:58, headlights cut through the mist. A white minivan, no logos, windows tinted, slowed as it approached the stop. Too slow. Ethan stepped back onto the curb, pulse quickening. He'd listened to enough Serial and Crime Junkie to know vans like that didn't stop for strangers out of kindness. The passenger window hummed down. "Hey," a calm voice said. "Mid-40s, clean cut, wearing a zip-up fleece. You waiting on the 27X?" Ethan nodded, non-committal. "Bus broke down near Garfield," the man said. "They're not sending a replacement till after 1 a.m. I'm heading downtown. Can give you a lift if you're going that way." Ethan shook his head. "I'm good." The man smiled, easy. "Suit yourself. But that knee's giving you hell, huh? Saw you favoring it when you stepped off the sidewalk." Ethan froze. He hadn't limped. Had he? "I'm a PT," the man added, gesturing to a yoga mat and medical bag on the passenger seat. "Off shift. Live 3 blocks from Harrison Street. You get off there, right?" "How does he know my stop?" "I'll wait," Ethan said, voice tight. The man nodded, rolled up the window, and drove off. Slowly, like he expected Ethan to change his mind. 2 minutes later, Ethan spotted it. The van parked down the block near the old tire shop. Engine off, no plates visible, just thick mud caked over the rear frame. His phone buzzed. Impossible, it was dead. He pulled it out. The screen glowed. 1% battery. One new message, unknown. "Smart kid. But your mom's room is 412, right?" Ethan's breath stopped. He ran, not home, but 6 blocks to the Eastbridge Public Library, one of the few 24-hour safe zones left in the city. Inside, he plugged his phone into a public USB port, hands shaking. As it powered on, he typed a note. "If I disappear, ledger under mattress. Apt 3B, 1827. Langston A.V. Priya knows, do not trust HR." Then he deleted it. They were tracking him? They had to be. Because 2 weeks ago, while processing a return labeled damaged item refund, he'd opened a box that didn't contain a shattered iPad. It held a small black ledger, handwritten, dated, names, dollar amounts, dates of deliveries, payments to Officer D. Ruiz, Eastbridge PD, payments to Councilman J. Bellwether, payments to Carl M., his own supervisor, and at the bottom of page 12, R. Velez, final approval on demolition permits. 15 case month, Rafael Velez, the guy on billboards, rebuilding Eastbridge, 1 block at a time. Owner of Velez Urban Renewal, which had bought up half the vacant lots in Ethan's neighborhood, then had them accidentally burned before the city condemned them. Always below market value. Always cash. Ethan had hidden the ledger under his mattress and tried to forget it. But now they knew. He spent the night in the library, wrapped in a donated blanket, watching the security camera feed on a public terminal. At 5:15 a.m., he called Priya from a payphone near the bus depot, the last one in the county, covered in stickers for bail bonds and roofing scams. "Ethan?" Priya's voice was raw. "Mom's asking for you, and there were 2 men here last night. Said they were from insurance. Asked when you'd be visiting." "Don't tell them anything," he said. "And call Marlowe, Dad's old friend. Tell him Veles and Ledger. Just that." Detective Roy Marlowe and Reynolds had been at his father's funeral. He'd hugged Ethan and said, "If anyone ever gives you trouble, you call me, day or night." Ethan hadn't called in 10 years. Now he had no choice. He walked downtown, avoiding main roads, eyes scanning every parked car. At the Eastbridge Chronicle, a once proud paper, now down to 4 full-time reporters, he asked for Lena Cho, an investigative journalist who'd won a Polk Award for exposing police overtime fraud. She listened without interrupting. When he mentioned the ledger, her pen stopped moving. "You still have it?" she asked. "Under my mattress." "Then they've already searched your place," she said flatly. "If they haven't taken it, they're watching you retrieve it." Ethan's blood ran cold. "They threatened my mom," he whispered. Lena stood, locked her office door, and opened a floor safe. "Then we move fast, and we don't go through channels. Half the city's on Velez's payroll, including people who wear badges." By noon, they had a plan. Find a whistleblower inside Velez's operation. Leak just enough to trigger a federal investigation. But quietly. Because in Eastbridge, quiet was the only way truth survived. That night, Lena got a tip. Anya Petrov, Velez's former bookkeeper, was scared and willing to talk. She'd fled to her sister's place in the waterfront district, but she wouldn't meet unless Ethan brought the ledger as proof he was real. It was a trap. It had to be. But what choice did he have? At 11 p.m. he snuck back to Langston Avenue. His street was dark. Too dark. The streetlights had been out for maintenance for weeks, ever since Velez bought the adjacent lot. His apartment door was unlocked. Inside, the mattress was slashed open. Pillows torn, drawers dumped, but the ledger, still tucked in a false bottom of his gym bag, was untouched. They hadn't found it, or they'd left it for him to retrieve. He grabbed it and ran. Anya met him at the old train yard, rain misting again, her face pale under a hood. "They're moving $8 million in cash tonight," she whispered. "From Dock 9, shipping container, leaves at 2 a.m. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Nexa Fulfillment leases part of Dock 9. Anya nodded. "They're using your warehouse as cover." Suddenly it made sense. The mandatory overtime. The odd crates labeled electronics that felt too heavy. The security guards who never checked IDs after midnight. He wasn't just a witness. He was part of the machine. "You need to get this to someone outside Eastbridge," Anya said, pressing a USB drive into his hand. "FBI's compromised, but there's a journalist in D.C. Works with whistleblowers. Her name is..." Headlights sliced through the fog. A black SUV. Then another. "Go!" Anya shoved him toward the tracks. "Now!" Ethan ran, ledger clutched to his chest as shouts erupted behind him. He didn't look back. He ran until his lungs burned. Until the city skyline blurred behind him. Until he reached Marlowe's old bungalow on the south side. The retired detective answered in sweatpants and a .38 snub nose in his hand. "Took you long enough," Marlowe grunted. "Get inside." Over coffee laced with bourbon, Ethan laid it all out. Marlowe listened, eyes narrowing at Velez's name. "That snake bought half the police pension fund," he muttered. "Ruiz. Yeah, he's dirty. So's half the narcotics unit." "So, who do we trust?" Ethan asked. Marlowe stared out the window. "No one with a badge, but I know a guy at Homeland. Clean. Retired last year. Lives off-grid in Vermont." It was a Hail Mary, but it was all they had. At 3 a.m., Marlowe drove Ethan to the Greyhound station, gave him $200 cash and a burner phone. "You tell no one where you're going," Marlowe said. "No, not even your sister." "Not yet." Ethan nodded. "What about you?" Marlowe smirked. "I've survived worse than Rafael Velez." As the bus pulled out of Eastbridge at dawn, Ethan watched the city shrink in the window. Its broken streetlights, its boarded-up storefronts, the hospital where his mom slept, unaware that her son had just become a target. He opened the ledger one last time. On the final page, in his father's handwriting, added the night before his fatal car accident, were 2 words. They know. And beneath it, circled in red, Carl M., his supervisor. The man who'd given him mandatory overtime the night the bus never came. Ethan closed the book. He wasn't just running anymore, he was delivering evidence. The bus ride to D.C. took 9 hours. Ethan slept in fits, waking every time the brakes hissed or a passenger shifted. He arrived at Union Station with $47, a backpack, and the ledger wrapped in a Ziploc bag. He met Maya Ruiz, no relation to the cop, at a vegan cafe near Capitol Hill. She was a former DOJ investigator turned independent journalist, known for breaking the Midwest opioid kickback scandal. She listened over oat milk lattes, scanning the ledger pages with gloved hands. "This is dynamite," she said quietly. "But it's not enough. We need digital proof. Bank trails, names on shell companies." Ethan handed her Anya's USB drive. Maya's eyes widened. "Where'd you get this?" "From someone who didn't make it out." Maya went silent. Then, "We publish in 72 hours, but you disappear. Today." She gave him a new ID, Daniel Reyes, temp worker from Harrisburg, and a room at a women's shelter turned safe house. "They won't look for you there." For 3 days, Ethan lived in silence, no phone. No internet. Just stale coffee, donated clothes, and the hum of city traffic outside his window. On the 4th morning, headlines exploded. Eastbridge exposed. Real estate tycoon linked to bribes. Drug money, police corruption. The D.C. Sentinel. The story included ledger excerpts, bank records, and Anya's testimony, published anonymously. Within hours, the FBI raided Velez urban renewal. Councilman Bellwether resigned. Officer Ruiz was arrested at his daughter's soccer game. But Rafael Velez vanished, and Carl M. nowhere to be found. Ethan called Priya from a library phone. "Mom's safe," she said, voice trembling. "I moved her to a private clinic in Philly under my married name." "But Ethan, they came to the old hospital, asked for you by name." "I know," he said, it's over." "Is it?" she asked. "Or did we just wake something up?" 2 days later, Maya called. "Federal grand jury's been convened, but Velez has friends in D.C. We need you to testify." Ethan hesitated. Testifying meant coming out of hiding, meant cameras, meant risk, but it also meant justice. He agreed. The deposition took place in a secure federal building. For 6 hours, Ethan described the ledger, the warehouse, the threats. He named names. He didn't flinch. Afterward, a U.S. Marshal escorted him to a safe house in rural Maryland. You'll be in witness protection soon, the agent said. New name, new city, clean start. But that night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about his mom, about Priya, about the neighbors in his old building, Mrs. Lynn, who watered his plants when he worked nights, Jamal, the high school kid who walked his mom to dialysis. They didn't get a new name. They didn't get protection. They just got left behind. At 3 a.m., he slipped out the back door of the safe house, took a bus to Philly. He walked into his mom's room just as sunrise painted the hospital walls gold. She turned, eyes filling with tears. You came back. I had to, he said, holding her hand. I'm not running anymore. 2 weeks later, Rafael Velez was arrested in Tijuana, trying to cross into Mexico with a fake Canadian passport. Carl M. turned to state's evidence in exchange for immunity. The Nexa Fulfillment Center was shut down for laundering. Turns out those discount phone cases were fronts for moving cash. Ethan never entered witness protection. Instead, he got a job at a unionized warehouse in Pittsburgh. Health insurance, 401k, overtime pay that was actually paid. He visited his mom every weekend. Priya started law school at night. And the ledger is now in a federal evidence vault. But Ethan keeps a photocopy, not out of fear, but as a reminder. In America, sometimes the only thing standing between corruption and justice is one tired, broke, ordinary person who refuses to look away.